Welcome to the Bubblehead Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Eric. I'm with my co-host Robert here. How you doing today, Robert?
I'm doing good. Just getting the podcast in before work here today.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped. First live episode. Uh, if there's anyone with us, hello. Hopefully, some will join us. If there's no one quite yet, we're super excited. The Bubblehead Podcast is moving at a breakneck speed.
Yeah. So our topic today, we're doing for a little bit of Devi content, and a little bit of preseason, meaningful or overblown hype, right? So, kind of the big thing's going to be today. We're going to be talking about for Devi. We're going to talk about hit rate for high school production versus your hit rate as a college prospect, right? So, what's the percentage look like for if you're an underproducer in high school? What's the percentage look like for you to actually be successful in high school, even if you're a high rated recruit, right? So, it's kind of be our big topic today there, and then. Looking forward to the preseason topics for us, and we'll jump into that. And first little bit here. Just wanted to shout out at FF Trash Pandas on Twitter. He was the one who kind of came up with this and set it up, and so wanted to make sure that we shouted out him for that. And I think this is incredibly valuable information. And I'm putting this in all my drafts for future use. So it was something that I took away immediately from that. So, but first, college news. So big news was recently a G. Hall suspension from Texas, and then also Isaiah Nayor's the ACL tear. So two wide receiver issues in Texas, and what do you think kind of plays out there after those two events?
Yeah, I mean, it's after a summer of hype for University of Texas. Are they back? Right? That's what everyone's been asking. I'm worried, right? You have Nayor's gone. I mean, Nayor's a transfer, but Nayor's super talented. This is a player that could have pushed Ajay Hall easily for the number 2 spot. I think it was likely they'd be number 2. Really, it'd be pushing Worthy. I think he's that good. It's just bad news, right? Ajay Hall. We've known there's been issues. 6 schools in 6 years, 4 different high schools, 2 different colleges. The dude's amazingly talented, but he's a knucklehead. He can't keep it together. Additionally, they lost their starting left guard, right? He's out for the season. And then there's the whole Quinn Ewers, Hudson Carr thing. I think that's baloney. I think it's obviously going to be Quinn Ewers. But it is not looking very good for the Longhorns right now.
Yeah, it's not a good start to the season, that's for sure. I think they still have talent, but I didn't think at the beginning of the year that they were back by any means, and I don't think this has changed anything really for me. I think it's definitely more just kind of solidified that. Any other big news you want to discuss for college though?
Yeah, so there was a couple other injuries. Right. So Avery Davis, he's a wide receiver at Notre Dame. He just tore his ACL. He's done for the year. This is unfortunate. This is a player that I thought could take the leap and finally give Notre Dame an outside the numbers passing option. Obviously, Michael Mayer is a stud over the middle. They're going to have a good run game. Got a good line. What it does do is it gives Lorenzo Styles a chance to step up, right? Styles was a pretty good freshman last year. But either way, it's going to hurt the Irish. This is a team that has college football playoff aspirations, and they just lost one of their better playmakers on offense, which, right, that's kind of been the missing pieces. Can they become explosive on offense?
Yeah, I think they're going to be a run-heavy team again, and they're going to have to win with defense. So I don't think it really changes their outlook, right? They were never a explosive team. They were trying to prove that they were an explosive team. Or becoming an explosive team, and I think this injury definitely hurts that. So, anything else for college news?
Just one more. This is your buddy JoJo Earl has the Jones fracture, looking to miss at least probably the first month of the season. What does this do for you about JoJo Earl? I know highly rated recruit, kind of had some moments, not many, but had some moments as a freshman last year. and we know the transfers came in.
I just think it gives Ja'Cory Brooks more of an opportunity. I think that he's probably the primary benefactor there, because a lot of those targets that JoJo Earl could have challenged for are going to probably go towards Ja'Cory Brooks and the rest of the transfers. And so I think Ja'Cory Brooks is probably going to be. I think he has a solid sophomore or redshirt freshman season. I don't know what's like classified as, but his second year in college, it's we'll see what happens. But I think this is going to be a breakout season for him.
All right. Well, before you go into this really cool high school production data, I got to just say, folks, you might be able to tell I'm in a new location. I'm hiding away in the corner of my house because, of course, like everyone else, there's work that needs to be done. When you don't buy an old house. That's what I do. It's a mistake. And I got power tools going on in my garage. If you can hear that in the background, I'm really sorry. Doing my best to, stay on mute when I'm not going. But yeah, please forgive the 1970 vibe. It's a look. It's not a permanent look here at the Steer household, but this is what I got. Anyways, Robert, why don't you lead us off with this really good data on high school players?
Yeah, so basically what this is kind of going about is it's taking your high school production from your primary year, junior and senior years, and it's looking at the hit rate for how many fantasy points per game you scored those 2 years in college, right? So there's a couple people in data, they had just junior seasons because of COVID or whatever, or because of injury. So, but the big thing there, right, is how many of these players are hitting at these values, right? So, kind of first thing we're going to jump into is running backs, right? So, how many of these guys make it to the NFL? How many of these guys are hits at the college level? And primarily what we're looking at is the NFL transition, right? We're not necessarily looking at college production. We're looking at NFL value, right? So if you're a top 3 round draft pick is what I believe we're classifying as a hit, right? So I think this is kind of something that you can really use to kind of basically eliminate players from your board, even if they're highly rated. One of the guys that I was actually shocked to hear actually fell into one of the bottom tiers of this was Branson Robinson, as a running back from Georgia, right? He's highly rated. A lot of people really like him. But in this, it actually, he's actually pretty unlikely to hit, right? So that's important to mention, important to understand when you're drafting him, because, hey, he's a dangerous pick now. So I'm kind of jumping into the table here. So if you're greater than 460, you have a 75% hit rate, 390 to 459.9 points per game. You're having a 47.62% hit rate, 320 to 389.9, 39.13%, 274 to 319.9, you have a 40% hit rate, and 230 to 273.9, you have a 17.65% hit rate, and less than 230, you have a 5.26% hit rate. Okay, so if you're a highly rated recruit and you fall into those, below a 273, then you're pretty much off my board at that point. Your hit rate is significantly lower than what I'm interested in taking a chance on. And we'll kind of jump into the wide receivers here in the next slide and the next topic. But, what do you think? What do you take from this this chart?
Yeah, so this is really new to me. You just sent it to me. I think it was yesterday. I didn't really get to dive into it. So you're leading the charge here. So this is fantasy football points at the high school level, right? This is that's what we're looking at here. Yep. So, I mean, like you said, you identified the Mendoza line. That's that 274 or more points is that Mendoza line. You have less than 5% chance, and if you're less than 230, you have about a 1 in 20 chance, right? So how good do you think you are, like, as a scout of high school players? I know I am pretty shaky at that, maybe, I'm just not an old, widely C2C league veteran yet, but my thought is, all right, I mean, are we drafting tons of freshmen in our C2C and Devi drafts? I don't know about y'all, but I tend not to. Like, I'll take a shot on a few of them, but unless they're like that really highest tier, I'm not drafting them early. I'll take them later on, just give a flyer if I like their situation, athletic profile, etc. But this is a great data point that we can use to really try and find value in our C2C and Debbie drafts.
Yeah, and that's kind of what you're looking for, right? You want to be able to find that value. So we actually just finished our C2C draft, and I was able to pick, and this is actually in the wide receiver group, but I was able to pick 3 guys who are in the second row, right? So they were in the for the runner. So let's use them in the wide receivers. So greater than 400 points, you have 100% hit rate. All the players who are above 400 have hit for the wide receivers, right? That's guaranteed. 280 to 399, you have a 44.44% hit rate. 200 to 279.9 points, 33.33%. And then 165 to 199, you have a 27.27% hit rate. And then less than 165, another 5.26%. So again, right, you're able to find value at these positions, right? So I was able to find 3 low 4-star recruits. So they're still decently highly rated recruits, and they all went to Power 5 schools. One went to Arkansas, one went to Tennessee, and one went to TCU. And I was able to pick all 3 of them up on our waiver wire, because we did a waiver wire right after the draft. I was able to pick all 3 of them, and their projected hit rate is 44%, right? So one of them will probably hit based off of the percentages, right? So I felt like it was a good idea to take a shot and kind of stash them. So, and I think that's what you can kind of do, right? Because you can look at that high school production and say, well, man, this guy's in that top 2 tiers. Like, okay, well, let me take a shot on him. Let me stash him for the the draft. And if I see somebody that's ever greater than 400, I'm absolutely taking them. Even if they're a 2-star recruit, I'm going to take them.
Yeah, I mean that's I like it. I will say, right, just beware that highest hit rate of 100%. That's only 3 out of 3, so it's still a small sample size.
It is,
but obviously, 3 out of 3 is 3 out of 3. That's still 100%. So you can feel pretty confident, especially if you like the athletic profile. If they're going to a good situation, that's some really check mark, right? Those are a lot of good trends. Yeah, I really haven't dove into this data to look, hey, where are my players, all these freshmen that I'm taking, or maybe the freshmen I took last year, where do they fall in this? Am I screwed up? Am I taking, these ones in the bottom 2 tiers? I hope not, because this data certainly makes it look like that'd be a mistake had I done that. Yeah, this is awesome. I mean, at FF_Trash Panda, like, good on you. This is some great data. Please, don't hate us if we're stealing your information. We're not trying to steal it. We're just sharing it as far and wide as we can, because you did some great work, and we want everyone to know about your work.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that was kind of it what I really want to talk about for it. I think this is very valuable information. I think people really can gain insight from using this data. And then also, using your athletic profiles and kind of trying to figure out who you're looking for at each position, right? So, I think this is great information. And but are you ready to move on to the NFL side, or?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So for the NFL, the big news to start off with is Deshaun Watson's suspension. So he just came down with an 11 game suspension and a $5 million fine. And, what do you kind of think about that? What does that put you with Deshaun Watson's value this year? Kind of where you at in Dynasty too? You're muted.
Hey, right off the rip, I want to talk about Deshaun Watson in fantasy football aspect, right? I'm not condoning, minimizing anything of his alleged actions, but as a fantasy football player, this is great news if you're a Deshaun Watson owner, because there was a serious chance that we were going to miss all of 2022. Deshaun Watson is coming back just in time to play the Houston Texans. Imagine that. 11, not 12. Interesting. But this guy could be a stud on your fantasy roster during the playoffs. Brings a lot of life to Amari Cooper during the playoffs. Honestly, I have been holding on to Deshaun Watson in a few super flex leagues through last year, through this summer. And, you always get those just terrible offers. Let me give you a second. Let me give you like a, 110 in the 22 rookie draft. And I'm just like, no way. Because even if he missed the whole year, he's still available. But he's not missing the whole year. He's going to play. He's going to play for, 2 months, about whatever. It's a month and a half of the fantasy football season. So he's got serious value. You don't have to worry about, hey, what's my second quarterback anymore. If you're a pro Deshaun Watson fantasy football owner, this is great news, isn't it?
Yeah, I definitely believed it should have been a year-long suspension, but at the same time, it's not. So, I think Deshaun Watson now is a value pick, but he's still not somebody you really want in redraft right off the bat, right? It's not somebody that I'm trying to draft and stash and redraft. But for Dynasty, you're talking about a guy who's going to come back and possibly win you the fantasy championship. So if you have him stashed, right, this is great news for you, because you're going to be able to bring him back for the fantasy playoffs, and as long as you're good enough to get in the fantasy playoffs, this is great. But the only thing I would say is kind of temper your expectations those first couple weeks back. I think I wouldn't be surprised if the first 2 or 3 weeks it he kind of looks terrible, because he hasn't played in what it's been almost a full 2 years now. So, just pump the brakes a little bit to start, right? But in the fantasy playoffs, I think he's going to hit a stride.
Yeah. So I got a question for you, Robert. If you're doing a startup draft starting today, when are you taking Deshaun Watson? How late?
See, I don't like taking players that are suspended for long periods of time in a startup, because I feel right, eventually there is value there, but there's probably not enough value at any point for me to be willing to take that risk, because we still haven't seen what he looks like. He still hasn't played for 2.5 years, so I am hesitant just in that. To answer your question, I think probably I don't know, maybe 8th round.
Wow. Yeah, you're not getting him, I think, in any draft starting today, because I'd be shocked if he gets out of the 3rd. I think more likely he's going to be a 2nd round pick in a startup draft right now. Where are you ranking him in Dynasty right now? Where in your QB pecking order now?
He's pretty high. He's still top 10. It's just my thing is he's going to miss 11 weeks, right? So I think that if I can find other players that I'm interested in that are boom players, I think that I can drafting Mac Jones is going to be a better value asset in a later round than drafting Deshaun Watson and him missing 11 games. I don't think Mac Jones is a better fantasy quarterback than Deshaun Watson, but for me, that first 11 games, that could lose me many games in fantasy in a super flex league, right? So if I draft Deshaun Watson super high like that, my rest of my team's going to be terrible. So I would rather, try to trade back to somebody who's interested in Deshaun and try to get a 1st round pick or a 2nd round pick or something next year, and then address the quarterback situation in a very good quarterback class in 2023.
Wow, I gotta say, I'm a little surprised. I didn't think I was gonna be the super high one relatively. I think Watson is right up on the first tier of quarterbacks. He's right around the Deshaun Watson, Joe Burrow, Trey Lance. I think he's right up there. He's sorry, not the first tier. He's in the 2nd tier. That first tier is 3 deep for me, right? Mahomes, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert. That's the first tier. That's not in order, but those are my first tier. The next tier, Burrow, Lamar, Kyler. I'll throw Watson in and I'll throw Dak in there. Again, not in any order. Just, that's my next tier. He's right there. I would be very okay taking him in the, 2-4 or so, in my startup.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, my hatred for Deshaun Watson in the super flex startup draft doesn't necessarily mean that I'm down on Deshaun Watson as a pair player. I just think you're going to sacrifice significant value drafting him and knowing he's going to miss 11 games.
Yeah,
and because I think you can basically just replace. You're going to be able to get a pick and trade that pick to get a better quarterback, in the draft next year. So I'd rather just have the better team to start off rather than miss 11 games.
I hear you.
But moving on to the rest of the list here. So Zach Wilson, his injury. I know you had a lot to talk about for him. For me, it's just okay. He's missing the first week, and I don't think Zach Wilson's going to be the answer anymore. So,
So here's my thing. There's Zach Wilson's value in Dynasty, and then there's all the weapons on the New York Jets value in Dynasty. I don't think this affects the value of any of those weapons, right? The Breece Hall, Elijah Moore, Garrett Wilson. I don't think it affects them because we already saw last year as a rookie. It was his rookie year, and I'm not hating on Zach Wilson, but his replacement QBs were as effective, if not more effective, at getting those players points. Now I expect Zach Wilson to make a jump, but really what this does, this delays his training camp. It delays building, that chemistry with these players. It delays his maturation as an NFL QB. And then are we rushing back from injury and he's, going to be playing, gimpy? This is a player that now he's not Justin Fields with his legs, but he's no Mac Jones. He's no Kenny. Well, actually, Kenny Pickett's he's more athletic than Jones. But anyways, Zach Wilson can run decently, right? That is a factor. He can get out of the pocket. He can make these plays with his big arm. So I'm worried that we're not going to see Zach Wilson really full health till midseason, maybe towards the end of the year. So I think it's really going to hurt his projection on the field in our fantasy lineups year 2, which what happens if this team's horrible? What happens if they have a top 5 pick? Do the Jets just say, let's move on? Let's grab Bryce Young. Let's grab Mayo Man Levis. Let's grab Anthony Richardson if you know what I mean? Like, I'm really worried about Zach Wilson in Dynasty right now. This was the year that he needed to show that step. And I think this makes the likelihood of that quite a bit lower.
Yeah, the Jets are terrible. There's no way you don't pick a quarterback. I mean, one, the offensive line is not very good either. But, they have weapons. But to me, it's Zach Wilson didn't show much that I'm interested in the first year. And I was kind of expecting him to fix those issues, but he really didn't. It didn't look like that, in the first through training camp. It looked like from what the reports I read. My big thing is like, okay, is he willing to dump it down to the running back? And, how does he react to when he's under pressure? And from what it sounded like to me, there were not very good reports from it, and so I like the Jets weapons. I think the Jets weapons are undervalued a little bit in Dynasty. Just because of the quarterback situation. But I feel like they have to go quarterback this coming year.
Well, I certainly hope you're wrong. I certainly hope that, they give Zach Wilson year 3 at least. But I wouldn't be surprised, right? People are doing that a lot quicker than they have been. In terms of franchise, they've been moving on a lot faster. That's really all I have on Zach Wilson. I'd love to chat up Kenny Pickett next if you're ready.
Oh, go ahead. I don't have much to say.
So it's not even – I want to talk about almost all the Pittsburgh Steelers in general, right? First of all, Gabe Davis, move over. You're no longer the dynasty wide receiver 1, obviously. It's George Pickens. George Pickens, dynasty wide receiver 1. You heard it here, not first, but here as well. Obviously, I am kidding. That's a joke. But – I want to take this as an opportunity to be like, guys, it's 2022. We really haven't figured out that training camp, football in August really doesn't matter. Cool your jets. Why does everyone just freak out? And, whether it's good news, bad news, act like it's the most important thing that's happened, right? Kenny Pickett, we're talking, oh, Mason Rudolph, he's going to take the second job, right? Obviously, he stinks. Worst ever quarterback. Well, first preseason game, he looks very sharp. He looked, like the pro-ready QB we expected out of 2022's class, which, granted, isn't saying anything at all, really. But now, those same people that were saying the house is on fire is now like, oh, Kenny Pickett, he's great. Like, calm down. Just don't react so hard.
Kenny Pickett played against third and fourth stringers. Like, the dudes he played against are not going to be on an NFL roster. Like, there might be 2 or 3 that make the NFL roster. Like, I do not care at all what you perform in the third quarter or fourth quarter of a preseason game. Do not care at all. It's basically like you playing in college. And for me, like, I took basically nothing from the Kenny Pickett game. And my thought with Kenny Pickett is, I don't think he offers you more than just a like average to like slightly below average quarterback. I don't think he is anything more than a game manager at best. And I just don't see why the Steelers would, be interested in sticking with that long term, especially if they are bad this year. And I don't think this offense is going to be good. So, you're going to probably steal. I would say the defense can steal them a few games, but I mean, I don't think this is a playoff team. I mean, we'll see, because they have a pretty talented roster. It's just the offensive line and the quarterback, really. But I'm not a big believer in Kenny Pickett. I've said it multiple times.
Yeah, well, you and I have disagreed on this, kind of unanimously through the offseason. I believe in Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett can be a good NFL quarterback. Will he? Who knows? I mean, first-round picks are like 50-50 if they're going to hit or not. So he's no surefire player by any means. But in that organization, with the weapons they routinely for decades have put around their QB, I definitely believe Kenny Pickett can be a value in Dynasty. He can be a valuable player for your rosters in Dynasty. But I'm with you. I'm not getting overly excited about a preseason game. That being said, good news is better than bad news, right? Matt Corral went 1 for 6 or something, in his same situation debut in the preseason. Obviously, I'd rather the Pickett news than the Corral news. But I'm with you. Let's not overreact, folks. Let's see what happens. Let's see, does Mitch Trubisky take the starting job the entire year? That I'm not, that I would be concerned about that. Mitch Trubisky is not Jimmy Garoppolo. So let's see. If I'm holding, I'm not selling. I had Kenny Pickett as a mid rookie, first round rookie pick, and I'm not selling. If people are trying to panic, don't. And if people are panicking, go grab them for a 2023 second, definitely.
So what about Mac Jones? There's kind of been mixed reviews. I've seen reports that from the beat that New England's offense has been atrocious, and then this week it was, hey, yeah, maybe they're not so bad. So, what do you think?
So really, I want to talk about Mac Jones and Justin Fields together, because I don't know if it's an anti-Pats thing. I am a Pats fan, so maybe I'm just a homer here, but everyone is talking about how Mac Jones is useless in Dynasty, ceiling so low. Meanwhile, Justin Fields is a darling, but everyone's already giving him a pass on year 2, saying he's going to suck. They have no weapons. Chicago hasn't done anything to help him. So they're giving him a pass. But Mac Jones is already, in the junk category. Who has better weapons, Mac Jones or Justin Fields? I think it's obvious that it's Justin Fields.
Yeah, I mean, Darnell Mooney's the best wide receiver of the group, right? So
by far. And I'll say Cole Kmet and Hunter Henry are equivalent. If not, they'd manage to Cole Kmet.
Yeah.
Not to mention running back. Tell me David Montgomery isn't better than, Damian Harris Stevenson? I think yes. That's not as close, or as big as a gap as Mooney is to any of the wide receivers in New England.
Yeah,
but you're right.
Yeah, we're talking about Jacoby Myers versus
all the
Mooney.
bad talk. Yeah. I don't believe in Tyquan Thornton. I'll just say it. I don't maybe I'm just going the helmet too hard. Baylor wide receiver, stay away. But he's just a straight line wide receiver. Like, unless he's just going to connect on all these deep passes, like routinely, I don't see a good fantasy, production from Thornton. But you're right. The last week or so, all of a sudden, all you hear is glowing news about New England's offense, which is so weird to me. Like, it was just trash the whole time before that. So I don't know what's going on. I think that they're going to, barely miss the playoffs by, have a good competitive season, but they're going to miss the playoffs because the AFC's loaded. And Fields, man, if he can win games, it's not about, putting up fantasy numbers. I think he could be a fine fantasy QB on that bad football team. But if Fields can lead that team to victories, because I will say the defense is, and then, just the head coach. So that to me would be great. I don't know. I want Mac Jones over Justin Fields in Dynasty straight up.
I wouldn't say that, but
Right here.
I mean,
I'm telling you.
So I was not a Justin Fields fan coming out of college, at least to the extent that I think most people were. I think he has to develop a lot in the passing game in terms of going through his reads and stuff, and I think we saw that in the NFL his first couple years or his first couple games. I think the Mac Jones, I think it's overblown, and Justin Fields, to be honest, I think it's kind of meaningful. I'm kind of indifferent on it, just because for me, Justin Fields, like, he will not be great this year. Like, I have no expectation for him to be good. But I think he has the better situation of the two, though. So
here's my thing with Mac Jones. Joe Burrow is the darling of Dynasty in the NFL. Joe Burrow had the greatest college football season of all time. The next year, Mac Jones had a better year. Why? Because Joe Burrow, yes, he can run a little bit, but, after the ACL, he didn't do much last year. Maybe he, improves on that this year, but he's not a runner, right? He adds some value, but little. So why is Joe Burrow a lock for a first-round pick in startup drafts? Why? Because he has Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Joe Mixon, right? You give those weapons to Mac Jones, I am convinced Mac Jones is a, QB1.
yeah, but that's not going to happen this year, right? So
Of course not. But the potential is there.
So I'll say this, like, why would you buy Mac Jones right now? Do you think it's going to go up this year? Do you think his value is going up? Like, I don't think it's going up this year. I think it might go down a little bit. So, I mean, I think you're taking it, like, because the preseason, like, naysayers it's overblown, but the fact that he's going to be, like, not great this year is probably it's probably meaningful, because he doesn't have the weapons in order to really put himself over the top. Like, he's still going to be a quarterback too, but I mean, where do you think that value goes next year? Because I don't think it's any better.
So, I mean, if we're right about our prediction with Zach Wilson, who is getting drafted ahead of Mac Jones by a round or two in startups, almost unanimously, their values will swap. Right? There are players that could fall down. And Mac Jones had almost the same receiving core, other than Tyquan Thornton and Devontae Parker, which I don't think either will do much. I believe in Devontae Parker, honestly, more than Thornton. So I think Mac Jones has a very similar season to last year. And if he can, put another solid year, show some improvement, I think his value definitely goes up, right? Especially because I think they have to gain another weapon next year. I just don't see a world where they're not drafting or trading for or bringing in free agency someone of note. So I think his value does go up a year from now.
Yeah. So, I mean, we'll see. I think that's kind of enough on Mac Jones, though. You have anything else you want to talk about the quarterbacks?
No, we don't need to hash everything out, at once. Let's keep it moving here.
All right. So running backs, Antonio Gibson, Josh Jacobs, Kenneth Walker, and Damian Pierce. So Damian Pierce, I want to start with him. Damian Pierce is the preseason darling right now. And I'll just start off. I think this is actually meaningful but I think it's meaningful in that there was never going to be anybody else in Texas, in Houston, right? Like the running back core was terrible. Like, and that was what we said at the draft. Like we said, this running back core is terrible. So why would I not be interested in Damian Pierce as a 1-year rental? I would absolutely sell him though, either immediately in the offseason or like right before the trade deadline.
Yeah, so most people have gained value with Damian Pierce already. I will say, post NFL draft, I did take Damian Pierce. I moved him up to my 12th spot overall for rookies. I had him as 112, right? A lot of people said I was crazy, but this is exactly why. Because he had the opportunity to be the James Robinson, to be the Elijah Mitchell, to be that late round running back or undrafted free agent running back in Robinson's case, that takes the league by storm and becomes that darling you're talking about. So cash out now, maybe. I mean, I think it's a little early just because, like you said, that running back room is terrible. So I think there's a good chance that Damian Pierce has a very solid rookie year. I mean, but I'm with you. If he has a good year and I can get out for 2023 first ever, like right now, 4 weeks into the year, next March, I don't care. I'm selling Damian Pierce because there's a pretty decent chance that they draft another running back, whether to spell Damian Pierce or to start ahead of Damian Pierce.
Yeah, I don't think Damian Pierce is the starter next year, or at the very least, I don't think he's going to be the 3-down back. But yeah, so I don't have anything else but Damian Pierce. Like, keep him, let him, increase his value a little bit more during the season, and then sell him before the trade deadline or immediately in the offseason. For Kenneth Walker, so what do you think about this? One, he just had an injury, but so Rashad Penny has always been looked at as the starter in, I think, the fantasy community, but I think people are kind of ignoring Kenneth Walker a little bit. Like, I don't think Rashad Penny is like such a lock for this job as people think. He's probably a lock for the job like the first 4 or 5 weeks, but what about after that?
So this is my issue. The hernia. So I wish Pete Carroll wasn't the coach of Kenneth Walker for this instance, because Pete Carroll, oh yeah, he's going to play week 1. I don't believe you for a second, Pete. I'm sorry. Like, you are the most overtly, like, ridiculously optimistic person when it comes to injuries of your players that I think it's ever, at least that I've ever seen. I mean, it's, you know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't be surprised if he misses a month. I wouldn't be surprised if he misses 2. Like, I'm not a medical professional. I don't know exactly, what his recovery is going to look like. But to me, I think, Walker to Penny, not even close. Who's more talented? Honestly, the reports recently before this injury were that Kenneth Walker was, look like all the things that you need in a 3-down running back. It really was starting to come on in training camp. The news was good. And I was worried. I have a couple of Penny shares that I held on to. And, I'm like, crap, these are turning into nothing. I was hoping I could at least sell them the first month. But assuming Penny stays healthy, which is quite the assumption, I think Penny can be a really solid RB2, at least till he comes back. The question is when.
So you think this is meaningful? You think that injury is meaningful?
Potentially. I don't know. They say 2 to 4 weeks. I could easily see this be 4 to 8. Easily.
Yeah.
This is a core muscle injury, right? He's a running back. There's a lot of players that have had trouble coming back from hernias. I'm worried. Not in Dynasty, because I think Kenneth Walker's a stud. And when he gets on the field, even if that isn't until 2023, which I don't think is realistic, I think we're looking at it latest midseason. But when he does, he's going to take over the back. He's just better. He's a fantastic player. This is a guy that has like the 3rd most forced missed tackles / broken tackles in Big Ten history. Like, he's a stud.
I mean, to be fair though, as the devil's advocate here, Rashad Penny was also a 1st-round pick, or he was a 1st-round pick, and Kenneth Walker was not. So, I mean, by draft pedigree, Rashad Penny would be better. I don't actually believe that, but at the same time, my thing with Kenneth Walker, I think it's overblown, but I think I was never expecting Kenneth Walker to be the starter week 1. I was always thinking it was going to be mid-season at best, and that's just because with running backs, they have to pick up pass protection, and I don't think this team's all that great, so I was never like fully expecting him to kind of slot in as a pass protecting back right away, and I think that this kind of solidifies that.
Yeah, I think what this does is it says there's no way Kenneth Walker is going to be Najee Harris. What we're hoping for is he's Javonte Williams, where, he has a slower start and he's sharing touches and eventually towards the end of the season, he starts to take more and more. And, he has a couple opportunities to really show how good he is. I think that's what we're hoping for, right? I mean, Javonte Williams, he's what, RB4 or something like that, unanimously in Dynasty. He's definitely an RB1, right? But he certainly didn't do that last year, right? What we're doing is projecting. I think that's what we're hoping for with Kenneth Walker, that this is a Cam Akers, a Miles Sanders from their rookie year situation where towards the end of the year, he really starts to gain momentum. And although he's not putting those points up, we're seeing a projectable, thing on the field. That's what I think this has turned into for Walker.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much else with Walker. I think the injury is something to think about. But who did you want to talk about next? Antonio Gibson or Josh Jacobs?
Why don't we tackle Antonio Gibson? Because I feel, or again, bring it back to Kenny Pickett, bring it back to George. This is such a blow up of, random beat reports, this and that of Twitter and the fantasy football community. Like, oh, he's practicing with the twos. He's practicing with the punting. Oh, wait, no, he's actually practicing back with the first team. He had a fumble, in the preseason. Like, people, this player has been RB12 and RB13 in his 2 seasons in the league on a terrible team. I'm not saying he's going to be an RB1. I'm not saying he's going to be a high-end RB2. But to act like he's just garbage and he's, an RB30, RB40 now, I think it's crazy.
Oh yeah, it's completely overblown. And my thing with it is, you remember last year they were saying in the beat report like, oh yeah, we're going to use him like Christian McCaffrey.
Yep. He was a top 5 dynasty RB at that time.
Yeah, so why are we suddenly believing this now? Like they just proved that they're going to go the complete opposite direction and say that he's not, like, we're going to say, oh, he's going to be used like Christian McCaffrey and then not use him at all. But for me, Gibson's just a solid RB2 until this team actually gets to be a decent team, which with Carson Wentz, I don't believe they're going to be a decent team. So why do I think that he's going to be, like, he's an RB2, he's going to stay an RB2. Like, Brian Gibbs Robinson's not going to take his job, and JD McKissick's probably going to take some passing down work. But honestly, the biggest thing for me with Gibson was whenever they brought McKissick back, that was the biggest negative. Not when they brought in Robinson. I don't care about Robinson at all. Dude's going to be out of the league in like 4 years. So, I'm not a believer in Robinson at all.
Yeah, I'm with you. We are firmly an anti-Brian Robinson for fantasy football purposes in the NFL podcast. I don't have anything against the player as a person, but I don't think we had him in our top 12 running backs. We were probably like late teens or something in our rankings. Even with the draft capital, I just don't believe in Brian Robinson. I think Antonio Gibson's proven he's a much better player. And additionally, I totally second your point about about McKissick. He was the nail into my Gibson, dynasty value, because that's been the issue, right? He's been a volume-based first and second down running back for the most part in his first 2 seasons. If he could, wide receiver out of college, of course he can't catch the ball, right? We've been saying this for a long time. Like, what the hell are they doing? He's, I think, a lot better than McKissick. I do want to talk about the fumbling piece. Some people talk about his fumbling very hard. I looked at the top 25 rushing leaders in the NFL last year and looked at their fumble rate over their career. I will not lie. Gibson's high. He's the 3rd highest out of this. James Robinson and Devin Singletary are higher, right? James Robinson, in my opinion, is a lot better running back so far than Singletary. But my point is he's only had 500 rushes and receptions in his career. very small sample size, right? Like Rashad Penny, if we're looking at fumble rate, is the third best out of those 25. Why? Because he's had 303 touches. These small sample size, right? Elijah Mitchell, 0%, one season. Najee Harris, the other one, the 1, 2, and 3 there, 0%, because he's that some of the other people in his tier or close by is Ezekiel Elliott, who's 1.4% is Gibson's percentage, 1.13 is Elliott's, 1.25 is Dalvin Cook, 1.23 Eckler, 1.2 Melvin Gordon, right? They're slightly lower, but these are really, really good running backs that are close. Like, yeah, he fumbles. He fumbles a little bit too much. We'd love, him to be James White, who you want impressive stat about James White? Hasn't fumbled in his career. 3-time Super Bowl winner. Should have been a Super Bowl MVP once. Never fumbled in his career. Obviously, we don't want him to fumble as much, but I think this whole thing about the fumbles is a little overblown, as is almost everything to do with Antonio Gibson right now.
Yeah, I don't have anything else about Antonio Gibson. So why don't you start us off with Josh Jacobs? Kind of tell us where you're at.
I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of hoping you would, because I don't know where I'm at with Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs, similar to Gibson, has been really good so far, but you're bringing McDaniels, who I'm certainly not saying yes. That makes me know they're going to be a bell cow running back. A lot of people say he's an RB, back running back by committee coach. Well, he's been in New England. Guess what? Bill Belichick makes the decision in New England. The coordinators in New England do what he says. Like, maybe McDaniels was the exception to that, but I'm not banking on that. But Samir White's solid. Kenny Drake's solid. He didn't pick up the 5th-year option. That is the issue for me. They didn't pick up the 5th-year option. But does that really make sense to pick up a 5th-year option for a crazy superstar running back? Because the 5th-year option is a lot of money. And all these running backs, for the most part, they've been getting a lot of money, haven't been, proving those contracts being worth it. So
I don't think Josh Jacobs gets paid. So I think all this camp stuff is meaningful with Josh Jacobs, right? For me, Josh Jacobs you're looking at his last year of being a guaranteed low RB2. And then next year you're looking at like, okay, well, where does he go? Where does he fit? What does the coordinator look like? What does the running game look like? And that's a bunch of unknowns that I'm not really interested in finding out. So if I have Jacobs still, I'm trying to sell him, or at least I'm trying to sell him as soon as he has a big game. I would say like they're gonna. I would argue that they might try to run him into the ground a little bit this year, but they also could go with the committee, right? I wouldn't be surprised either way. With the coach, I think with that though, whenever he was in Denver, I'm pretty sure he did a running back by committee there too. So I think this Josh Jacobs stuff, I want to sell. Like if I have Josh Jacobs, which I don't really anymore, but if I have him, I'm trying to sell him because I think you can get a lot of value there. And I know there's a lot of passionate Jacobs supporters out there, but you don't want to be on the train when it falls off in this case. And you already got solid production out of Josh Jacobs for a few years, but I don't think there's much left, like in terms of increased value, right? So I think you've already seen the peak value.
Yeah, this is my question: is what are you selling Josh Jacobs for? What are you buying Josh Jacobs for?
If I can sell him for a first,
easy day, right?
Yeah.
But who's buying them? Who's buying Josh Jacobs for a first? I don't think it's happening. Like,
yeah,
are you doing him for 2023 second?
No, I'm keeping for the year because I would see
exactly.
I would see if he has a good start to the year and then try to sell him after that.
Yeah, if you can get a first from him, yeah, sell, of course. But that's where I'm at. Like, he's in like the fantasy dead zone where no one's going to pay what it's worth to sell Jacobs for the most part in probably 80-90% of leagues. And no one, like he's in that bad spot. Like you're not going to sell for what people are willing to pay. So if you have Jacobs, most likely you're just holding and hoping for something. I think, right, say he has a bad year. Don't just sell him for nothing. Josh Jacobs could very easily have a James Conner-like resurgence. He could go to another team that needs a bell cow or at least a lead back in the committee, and he could be good. He's a talented player. He's a young player, but his days as an RB1, I think, are toast.
Yeah, I don't have him as somebody that I am terribly interested in, but
definitely not a target for me.
Yeah. Do you have anything else for running backs? You want to jump into wide receivers?
No, let's keep it moving.
All right. So, last four people here that we're going to talk about is Michael Thomas, Rashad Bateman, DJ Chark, and George Pickens. So, I want to jump into Michael Thomas first because I have been dying to talk about Michael Thomas.
Imagine that.
Imagine that. I believe Michael Thomas is going to be a wide receiver 1 this year, or at least a high wide receiver 2. I am completely think all the hype this season is meaningful because the only concern this entire time has been the injury, right? And so seeing him come back on the practice field and seeing that explosion come back, like I'm all in again. I'm all in. And it's not necessarily because I don't think he's going to get, the huge amount of targets that he got the year he broke the record, but I don't see him getting less than, what he was getting to make him a top 10 wide receiver before the record breaking season. I see him, getting about probably about a 10, 12, 15 targets a game. I would say 10 is probably my floor because I would say that him, Chris Olave, and I think Jarvis Landry is the dead duck here. I think Jarvis Landry is going to be the guy that is completely ignored because of Michael Thomas in terms of fantasy production. And so I'm all in on acquiring Michael Thomas. His value, right? Like I just got him in the 8th round of a draft, right? Like if you are still getting him in 8th, 7th, 8th round, like smash it because you're getting extreme value. The injury is not necessarily a concern anymore. It was never a long-term injury concern, I don't think, once he at least got the actual correct diagnosis. Because it sounded like from what I had heard that basically, he got misdiagnosed with the injury initially and that there was torn ligaments that was never corrected the first year. So I think it's all I think it's a big opportunity to get Michael Thomas. Unfortunately, though, the people who are in Dynasty and they already have Michael Thomas, none of them are selling. I've tried to acquire Michael Thomas for the last year and a half in Dynasty, and nobody's selling because they're all holding for that record-breaking season, right? So,
yeah, I mean, you missed your window. Like, if you want to pay for Michael Thomas, you're paying for a wide receiver 1. Like that's the price. You're paying for a Keenan Allen. You're paying for a Mike Evans. Like that's the price at this point. A month ago, you could have gotten a better value. 5 months ago, could have got a lot better value. I still think it's worth getting Michael Thomas. Like if I'm a contender and I can go and add Michael Thomas as my 2, and make a Devonta Smith or Rashard Bateman my wide receiver 3, by acquiring Michael Thomas, I'll give away that first, if that's going to give me a good chance to win a title because, the late first for 1, 2, top 15 seasons from Thomas, I think that's, worth it. But you're right. It's all about injury. That's been the issue, not talent. He's a phenomenal talent. My understanding is that he had the initial surgery after it was delayed, and then he re-injured himself. And he actually had a second surgery for a different injury. So it wasn't one thing. It was a misdiagnosis. It was actually 2 injuries. I'm not positive, but, it wasn't just one ankle injury that was forever, right? But I'm going to challenge you a little bit on the math for your targets, right? So he had 186. His record-breaking season, he was 185. Now, that wasn't in 16 games, but 10 a game in a 17-game season, that'd be 170. So he's definitely not having 15 a game.
Yeah, that was
Definitely. I mean, if he has 15 a game, he's going to be the wide receiver one. It's that simple, right?
Yeah, that's
He would shatter the target record. But anyways, I'm thinking it was realistic. It's like not realistic. What I'm hoping for is 8 to 9. That gets him in his 2 seasons prior to the record breaking. He had 149, 147 targets. That's what I'm looking for. 140, 150. He has 140, 150. He can be a top 12 wide receiver. He's not going to, crush it in the yards per catch, most likely. He's more the shorter intermediate route receiver, at least so far in his career. But Drew Brees to Jameis Winston, we know likes to air it out. Are you worried about that at all? That maybe he's not really the first target for Jameis Winston
he's been the first target for him in the training camp before Jason Davis Winston got hurt. It was Michael Thomas just getting all the catches. That was the report from Nick Underhill, and people. It's funny, people say that all the time. They're like, oh well, he had Drew Brees thrown it to him. Drew Brees was like 70% of Drew Brees the last 2 years,
if that.
Right? Like he couldn't throw the ball past 20, 25 yards, and he definitely couldn't put any zip on the ball. So
yeah, no hate to Drew Brees, Hall of Famer, dude's stud. But just like Big Ben, similar, by the end, just was a shell of themselves.
Yeah. So, I think people overblow that. And I'm not saying that Jameis Winston's going to be like an elite quarterback with Michael Thomas, but he was decent to good with Marquez Callaway, who might not even make the team this year as his wide receiver one last year. The reason the Saints started losing a bunch of games was because Jameis Winston got hurt, not the other way around.
Well, it was a lot more than just Jameis.
It was, yeah.
Kamara got hurt. Armstead got hurt. Yeah, the rest more than me, but they were,
their entire
one of the most injured teams in the NFL last year. But I love what they've done with their weapons. One, the news is that Kamara is unlikely to be suspended in 2022. Just want to put it to you because remember we talked about that. Yeah. But anyways, furthermore, Jarvis Landry, really good, great teammate. He's a great teammate, but he's a great complement to Thomas. And then you add in Chris Olave, who I think he's going to be the deep threat. I think he's going to be going downfield. He's got the speed. He's got solid size, not huge, but
and you're forgetting about Deontay Harris too, right? So Chris Olave and Deontay Harris.
Waiting. He's one of my favorite late best ball selections because he's going to have those games where he catches the 70-yard touchdown. He's, he might go 2 for 81 with a touchdown, but guess what? Boom, he's the 28th pick in my in the startup. All of a sudden, it's in my roster, right? Yeah. But I know he was having a contract dispute. Did they solve that?
They did. He's back.
He's reported. Okay, good. Because I love him as a fourth wide receiver. I think him and Olave just flying down the field and having Jarvis and Michael, underneath. I think that's a great combination. Plus Troutman. I actually like Troutman a fair amount. Those three underneath with Kamara, who personally I think he's even better as a receiving weapon than Christian McCaffrey. You just heard it here. I really do. I think he is.
I mean, what the thing with Kamara has always been that he doesn't get the volume that Christian McCaffrey always got.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, so I don't have anything else about Michael Thomas. I just wanted to make sure that I put out there, buy Michael Thomas,
But no, I'm with you. I'm loving Michael Thomas. The couple leagues I had him and held him, I'm happy I did. I didn't jump ship. And, every draft that I've done this offseason, I've been trying to get him just because the potential was there and he finally looks like he's healthy.
Yeah. So for me, the next one to talk about, I think, is Rashad Bateman. So I actually kind of lump in all the Ravens wide receivers in this group. So for me, I've heard a lot of people say that like Rashad Bateman, like I've heard a lot of me get a lot of hate recently, and I don't really get it. There is a reason that the Ravens decided to trade Marquise Brown. Right, Hollywood Brown. Why would I not believe that Rashad Bateman's going to take over the role that Hollywood Brown had? One, I think he's going to get at least 130 targets, 120 targets. And from all the reports from training camp is that Lamar looks best he's ever had, best as he ever has looked throwing the ball. So, I think it's a contract year for Lamar. So I think he's going to be throwing the ball a lot. I think he's going to be trying to prove that he's a pocket passer or is capable of being a pocket passer.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, it's kind of gross how often we've actually agreed here. Hopefully, we'll disagree on DJ Shark, but I love Bateman. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's not like a super highly ranked, but that's just because of where the state of wide receivers are. I got a question. I want to throw some names at you and play a little quick name game. Rashard Bateman or Devonta Smith?
Oh Lord, I'd still go to Devonta Smith just because I like the talent a lot. But
I'm the same, but they're very close. Rashard Bateman or Elijah Moore?
Rashard Bateman.
Okay, I'm going to lean Elijah Moore. Rashard Bateman, Garrett Wilson.
Garrett Wilson.
Same. Rashard Bateman, Drake London.
Drake London.
The only one I differed with you with Elijah Moore. I had all of them just above Bateman, but they're all in that same range, right? How about, let me try one that I'm actually lower. I'm lower. All right, how about this one? Chris Olave. You're a lot higher than Olave than I am. Do you want Olave or Bateman?
This year I want Bateman.
Let's say Dynasty. We're doing a startup.
So Dynasty, I put this on Twitter, and I want to kind of, this kind of goes into your topic here, but I have this thought because I think this is what's going to happen with Olave. I think people are drafting Olave higher this year than they would be next year. So I would go Bateman because I think his value goes up, whereas Olave's goes down, right? I think Olave is going to be the better player and the better pro, but I think I can sell Bateman next year for Olave plus.
I mean, yeah, that's how you have to play Dynasty. That's that next level of Dynasty where even if you prefer one player, you're taking this one because you believe the value will go there. Personally, I want Bateman in both situations, long term and short term. I believe Bateman's the better player just as a prospect. And I wouldn't be surprised. Well, it's tough, right? Because Lamar, right? Lamar is not the passing weapon, pass first option. Well, he is pass first. He's not going to run the ball first, but he runs the ball a lot more than a Jameis Winston does. And I actually think Winston's the, medium to long-term answer in New Orleans. But Michael Thomas, clearly number one. Mark Andrews, in my opinion, clearly number one. But then you get Kamara in there. So Kamara, to me, is the number two probably in terms of targets. And Jarvis Landry is a lot better than, James Prochet or Devin Duvernay, whoever the hell you want to put in there. So I got Bateman, but I just want to do a quick little name game because all those wide receivers we just talked about, they're all drafted within, like a block of 7 to 10, wide receivers in your startup. So, it was a good little exercise, I think.
I do think one person that I'd like to mention from the Ravens group, and you mentioned him a little bit, was Devin Duvernay. I think he's a solid little late round flyer in Dynasty. You can stash him on the end of your bench, and he could be the number 2 wide receiver there, and maybe gets produces a high wide receiver 3 season, maybe a low wide receiver 3 season, and maybe even higher. You never know. I think he's a decent stash there, but. Moving on from the Ravens to the Lions. So I think DJ Shark is the forgotten man in Detroit. I think people are stuck on Amon-Ra St. Brown, and people are forgetting DJ Shark, other than his rookie year and then this past year when he was hurt, he's actually been very good. Like he is not not very good, but he's been good. I don't think that he's gonna just disappear in Detroit, right? I think he's going to challenge Amon-Ra St. Brown for targets, and I think that's a knock for Amon-Ra. But I'll say this: you can get DJ Shark for free. He's like a 15th round pick. I take the shot on him, and he could get you a wide receiver 2 season if everything falls perfectly for him, and he's back from the injury. he could produce you a wide receiver 2 season. The issue is that Jared Goff is not the type of quarterback that makes DJ Shark good. DJ Shark is more of a deep threat to intermediate threat receiver. He's basically the same thing as kind of Chris Olave in terms of like the way they play the game. And that's not what Jared Goff does. That is not what Jared Goff does. So that's the only reason I'm hesitant with DJ Shark, but I do think he could at least be a solid wide receiver 3.
Shark, I think Shark's a good value, right? Going probably too late. But my issue, so I'm thinking Amon-Ra is more fighting Hawkinson for targets, and Shark is going to be fighting JMO for targets, right? I think that's why they brought in Shark, is they wanted that deep threat. Because you're right, he's got wheels. He's a big body receiver that can go down the field. I think that they needed that in their offense. But
so
then
we're not even. What if Jameson doesn't play this year?
Well, sure, but right, Dynasty.
Well, he's on a 1-year deal.
I don't see their exactly. He's got the 1-year deal. That's my point. He's got the 1-year deal. I don't think he's re-signing in Detroit. Could he have a solid year? Yes, but then, right, like how many? I don't know. The contract means a lot to me. There's so much stability there. Now, if I'm going to buy with the intention of like selling, right after the season or maybe at the trade deadline or something, sure. But I guess I'm not factoring in long.
But what are you? Yeah, what's the market value right now for TJ Shark? Because you could probably get him for super cheap, right? So
I don't think a third's doing it. I would think you'd need to do a third and a younger player that has potential. A second would definitely do it, right?
I don't think many. I think
I
you
wouldn't
could probably buy it for a third.
I don't think so. I certainly. I mean, if that's the case, I'm going to start floating out thirds to everyone because I'm definitely not giving up Shark for third. I would give him up for second, but
I mean, I guess I'm kind of going off of the draft value, right? Like his startup value right now is so low that like, why would I expect anything above a third round pick for him if I'm like trying to sell?
Well, I think I know what I'm doing once I get off of this podcast because I honestly didn't realize the value was that low. So yeah, I love to buy then.
Yeah, I mean, because in a redraft, I just got him for the 15th round pick, right? So people are valuing him right around like that'd be probably right around like wide receiver 70-ish, if I had to guess off the top of my head. But yeah, so moving on to George Pickens. I think this is meaningful. I think George Pickens, the reason that people we had talked about it whenever we did our wide receiver rookie rankings. The big thing that we had questions about George Pickens was not the talent, it was the injury. I wanted to know if he was back from the ACL, and it looks like he's back. And so, you know what that means? That means I'm all in on George Pickens. Now, am I trying to draft him, first overall in rookie drafts? No. But I would absolutely put him in the, like 1.06, 1.07.
Well, yeah, I mean, so George Pickens, what he's doing, I'm not surprised. My pre-NFL wide receiver rankings were Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Treylon Burks, Jameson Williams, and George Pickens. I had him at 5. That was probably higher than consensus. Almost guarantee it. After the landing spot, I bumped him up to my 8th overall player post-NFL draft. He still was wide receiver 5 for me, but the question is he still my wide receiver 5? I think I have to move him over JMO. Like, we've seen Pickens come back from the injury. So he's got to go over JMO. The question, for me is, do they go over Treylon Burks? And that one's hard for me. But I tend to think yes. I think
I wouldn't put him
go to wide receiver 3.
I wouldn't
in this rookie class.
I'd put him at 4.
Who you got? Burks or Williams over him?
So Burks.
Yeah, I mean, Burks could be so special, but so could Pickens. I mean, this dude is big, fast, athletic, and has great hands. I mean, call me crazy, but I really do. I think I got to bump him up to wide receiver 3. And the Pittsburgh thing is real. Just look at what they've done with second and third round wide receivers for the last 20 years. Like, that was a big bump for me because, right, it wasn't just injury. George Pickens had some off the field issues down in Georgia, getting into fights, whether it was against another team, maybe his teammate. He was kind of a knucklehead, but Mike Tomlin, I am very confident, can manage that, probably better than, honestly, I don't know if there's anyone in the league I trust to handle a situation like that better. So now, no, I'm not going to go, oh, George Pickens, wide receiver one. There's some people being silly, kind of like Gabe Davis was happening, in the playoffs last year. But I guess what I'm thinking is because a lot of people were not drafting George Pickens that high. A lot of people, his ADP was probably mid-second, late second. So I got a lot of shares of him, with, 202, 204, 201, in my leagues. I have a lot of shares. And a lot of people are hitting me up saying, hey, what do you want for Pickens? What do you want for Pickens? I'm sitting here just thinking like, well, this is X, the little evil genius face. But what is the price? Like, what do I need to get to give him up? Because I got to say, unless I'm
not giving him up. Not
unless
until
it's like a almost guaranteed to be a high first next year, one first isn't doing it.
Yeah, it's got to be 2 firsts.
Yeah, like too late first.
Or like it's got to be guaranteed 1.01. Like, but you can't guarantee 1.01 because it's literally the beginning of the season, right? So like,
wow. So even if you had a team that you could guarantee, was
he could be the wide receiver 2 or 3 in Dynasty, 5 years from now. You never know, right? So like, I think he has the talent to be a potentially a Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase like level talent.
I agree.
And so why sell that for 1 first round pick?
Even though you hate Kenny Pickett, though?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't like Kirk Cousins.
Well, I don't know what to say that because Kirk Cousins has been a very solid fantasy, wide receiver.
Yeah, he's not bad. What I meant by that more was,
him or Kenny Pickett are going to be a top 5, a top 3. No, but they could be a Derek Carr. They could be a Kirk Cousins.
So you think I hate Kenny Pickett? What I say with Kenny Pickett is I think he's not a first round quarterback. Like I think he's an average quarterback, right? Like he is.
Well, sure, but every quarterback gets pushed up. Even Kyler, right? Kyler went over Nick Bosa. Nick Bosa obviously was the better talent, the better player, right?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is
they always get pushed up.
What I'm saying is that I don't believe that he's going to be somebody that puts the Steelers over the top. I think he's going to rely on a ton of talent around him. That's all I'm saying about Kenny Pickett. I've never said that I don't like him. I just think he is a bang average quarterback, which is fine for George Pickens.
Oh, yeah. It could definitely provide, Deontay Johnson and George Pickett. That's a real question here. What's going on with Chase Claypool? I think some people are saying this hurts Deontay Johnson. I don't think at all, right? He's fighting, what is it, the hip flexor? I don't know. He's been nursing something. I believe it's a hip flexor for most of camp. I'm not worried about Johnson. I'm worried about Claypool. I think, which was kind of like, in a way, fucked up. You realize that they had Chase Claypool announce George Pickens' pick for the NFL draft? Like the guy that's going to take his job. I kind of think that was a little messed up. But I think it's going to be Deontay Johnson, Claypool, and Pat Freiermuth, as their like 3 primary receiving weapons for the next 3 years or so. You can never think too long-term with Pittsburgh because they just kind of cycle their receivers in and out usually.
Yeah, I think he could be the replacement as wide receiver 1 overall in Pittsburgh long-term. That's just.
Yeah. I had him at wide receiver 5, not because of talent, because I was worried about an injury and because he had, a couple of off the field concerns. Now he's up to wide receiver 3. And I mean, I love Drake London and I love Garrett Wilson. So to be right there, I mean, that's saying a lot for me. How about this? George Pickens or Rashad Bateman? How about that?
George Pickens and over Rashad Bateman?
Yeah,
I'm
which one
taking
you want?
George Pickens. George Pickens is 100 out of 100.
Wow, really? Wow. Just because of the upside's, higher?
The upside's significantly higher.
Fair enough. Wow. Okay.
He was
ADP, I
a
don't think it's caught up
legitimate,
there yet.
like people forget, like he was a legitimate like top 15 talent before the injury.
Oh yeah, all of that.
Like he was elite his freshman and sophomore at the beginning of his sophomore season.
Well,
Like, so like if he's back from his injury, like, I want all of the shares. Like,
I love it. I love it. All aboard the George Pickens train. Robert is. I love it.
yeah. Other than George Pickens, though, and our clear love for George Pickens, do you guys have anything else? Do you have anything else for us you want to talk about?
No, I think that's wrapping us up. Yeah, I mean, this is an opposite episode. I'm so happy that we did this live. Please like us, subscribe, smash that button, please. Interact with us on Twitter. You can see just below our Twitter handles. We'd love to hear more from you. What are we screwing up? What are we doing right? What do you want to hear from us? This is the fun part of the season where, we can really get creative and do whatever we want. Thank you, Robert. This was a blast. Had a really good time. Hopefully, y'all didn't have to hear too much nonsense in the background. I apologize if there was. Please, don't look too closely at my disgusting background here. But yeah, what a great time. Are you excited?
Yeah.
I am so freaking excited. Football is almost here. We can, get past training camp news and this stupid beat reporter like blow ups of Twitter, and we can just watch real football. I'm so pumped.
Yeah, and I think college football season coming up here soon too. We got 2 weeks until college football season, and
can't wait.
I can't wait. Yeah, right.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm more excited about college than NFL.
Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie. Like NFL is great and all, but college has something special about it. And pretty soon, I don't know. It's not gonna be long, but it's not gonna be called college for long. I mean, the whole NIL, pay for play. Eventually, it'll be something else. But whatever it is, whatever it's going to become, I love it. I love it. Can't get enough of it.
All right. Well, yeah, we thank everybody for listening, and give us a follow on Twitter and let us know what you think. And yeah, thanks for listening, guys.
Thank you.